President-elect Donald Trump's team has just announced its nominees for the posts of Secretaries of Defence, Secretary of State, and National Security Advisor. They are Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defence, Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, and Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor. Now, these three gentlemen are going to be key advisors to President Trump on defense and national security for the next 4 years. And very interestingly, all of these appointees are hawks on China, and they're friends of India. What do these appointments mean for India? Joining me to discuss this are Sachdeva, President of the Imagindia Institute, former Indian Diplomat Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, and Manish Chand, Senior Journalist. And in the studio I have with me my colleague R Sridharan, TV9's Foreign Editor. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Sri, I want to start by asking you this. I was just looking at the average age of Team Trump's national security and foreign policy team. Yeah, 49 years, that's how old the team is.
Absolutely.
One of the youngest teams like this that we've probably seen in all of the US government, in all of these decades.
That's true.
Trump is gone for youth.
Absolutely. Youth and also at the same time experience. Sandeep, let us not forget that all these people who've been put in these jobs have actual experience of their departments.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, he's the first Green Beret, Mike Waltz, you know,
Yes.
is going to be the NSA.
Right.
Right.
He's a major. He was a major in the, and not a
Absolutely.
general. Normally he would go for like a general or an admiral or something in the team, the
That's right.
first term, right? Mike Flynn.
So
general.
not just young, but
Yes.
people who actually know what they're talking about. So I think that bodes very well for Team Trump.
Yes.
And for India, I think it's great because Mike Waltz is also the head of the India caucus in the Congress.
Yes.
And his position on China is well established.
Right.
And it's been known for years now.
Yes.
He's spoken about the systematic espionage that happens, in colleges via Chinese students.
Yes.
He's talked about the origin of COVID and how China has hushed it up. He's talked about the threat that China poses to in the Indo-Pacific region.
Yes.
So I think that's a good name from Indian perspective to have as the NSA. Advising Trump on his geopolitical strategy as far as this part of the world is concerned.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, we're looking at these names that Team Trump has put out for its NSA, SecDef and Foreign Secretary, a very young team. Very interesting because all of these gentlemen are China hawks. When it comes to Beijing, they're very clear in, of course, USA first, but they're very, very hawkish on China. How would you be looking at these appointments, particularly when these are the three gentlemen who will also be dealing with NSA, Ajit Doval, Foreign Minister Jaishankar and Rajnath Singh?
Well, Waltz is considered particularly hawkish in China.
Yes.
And I recall that he had called for a US boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing.
Right.
And he did so because of Beijing's alleged involvement. And in fact, it's more than alleged now, it was proven in the origin of COVID-19.
Right.
He was also not happy about the mistreatment of the Uyghur Muslims.
Right.
And on several occasions, he had reiterated the importance of India to the United States.
Right.
In fact, as you mentioned in your introductory remarks, he was the co-chair of the India caucus in the US Congress.
Right.
And he had always advocated warmth with India. He had advocated closeness with India. And frankly, I think he was one of the people who was involved in the organization of Prime Minister Modi's address to the US Congress when the Prime Minister visited the United States last year. And there was a lot of perceptible warmth in the manner in which he met Prime Minister Modi.
Absolutely, yes.
I may also mention that Waltz had traveled to take part in the Independence Day celebrations last year. And he was full of praise for Prime Minister Modi.
Right.
I may also note with some degree of this is very important. He had said that Justin Trudeau's government is going to fade away. Right. So he is in sync with many of our own foreign policy interests.
Interesting.
Similarly,
Yes. Yes.
Marco Rubio
Yes.
has advocated a muscular foreign policy regarding China,
Right.
Iran, of course, Cuba. He is a strong supporter of the India-US partnership.
Yes.
And in July this year, Rubio had introduced the US-India Defence Cooperation Act
Right.
to expand bilateral cooperation with India, which he felt needed such cooperation because of the aggression from Beijing. So
Right.
these are particularly striking facts about these two very significant, likely appointees to the Trump cabinet.
Right,
Of
absolutely,
course,
yes.
the defense secretary's name is also very significant.
Yes.
But he is a news anchor.
Right.
And I don't think he has any first-hand experience of administrative responsibilities.
Yes.
But nonetheless, the fact that he's so close
Right.
to President-elect Trump
Yes.
would give him the necessary wherewithal and the confidence to deal with his responsibilities.
Yes, yes, absolutely, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. And the fact is that, Pete Hegseth is someone whose appointment I've looked at with, very closely, because I look at the military and defense, and, it's almost like John Rambo being appointed as Secretary of Defence, Sri, He's like a Green Beret. He's had several years of service in the US military, and a Green Beret is like literally the cutting edge of the US military. True. And, appointing someone like that tells you so much about what Team Trump is up to. But Robin Sachdeva, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal brought out this fact that it's really good for India. All of these three appointees who are going to be meeting our NSA, our defense minister and our foreign minister, they're all pro-India, anti-China. Where does this really play out, when it comes to US policy? What is the kind of heft that these three officials have when President Trump is going to decide his China policy?
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be with you, and a pleasure to also see Shri. I think I'm seeing him after years and years and years, and also Manish, very old-time people, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now, the way I see it, one, when you started your program, you said for the next 4 years. Firstly,
Yes.
Knowing Trump's track record, we cannot be sure that everyone will last 4 years, but yes, right. The next 4 years or several years, definitely yes.
Yes.
Secondly, what's happening this time round, he is building a very cohesive team.
Right.
As per what he wants.
Yes.
The previous administration in 2017, when he assumed office, he was kind of a novice. Right. And, mainstream Republicans kind of pushed him and,
Yes.
got him to hire traditional conservative Republicans.
Right.
Right. He hired many judges from the Federalist Society and all. Later on, he was very unhappy with them.
Yes.
So this time around, he is going ahead fresh. Doesn't need to bow to any traditional conservative Republicans.
Right.
He is building a team as he wants, where he wants to pick. Thirdly, so he has a much more free hand and a cohesive team that he's building. One more point as to these gentlemen who are there, and of course, ultimately it's in Trump's image he has them.
Yes.
As you're saying, they're hawks.
Yes.
They are maybe not warriors.
Right.
They're negotiators, hard, will negotiate, but they're not fighters.
Right.
And similarly for Trump, in fact,
Explain the difference, Robin Sachdeva. Explain this difference for us. What's the difference between being a hawk and being a fighter or a warrior?
Okay, I would frame
or a
it
negotiator,
in the context
yes.
of, sure, exactly. I would frame it in the context of what Steve Bannon has been saying often, and there's a school of thought.
Right.
That Trump is a negotiator.
Right.
He will come down hard with China, he'll negotiate, he'll make a deal.
Right.
But he will not go to war against China.
Right. He's very clear on that. He said, I'm not the president who starts war. I only end those wars.
Exactly. So if there is a thought that America sometime would need to, with muscle, go to war against China, that will not happen. Okay, so within that constraint, yes, these are hawks, and they will, definitely guide American foreign policy in a cohesive sense.
Yes.
And they're all beholden to Trump. Right now, it's all Trumpotopia. It's the world of Trump, it's the church of Trump.
Yes.
So he can pick as a fly and replace. And lastly, Reagan had said once that, the personnel is the policy, right? So it indicates to us that each person, as you are analyzing now, what's their background, where do they come from, as ambassador was also looking at. So
Yes.
looking at their, at their persona, their previous, statements, their stances, what they've done and all,
Yes.
we can get a fair idea as to what each of these individuals will do.
Absolutely. Personnel is policy, Sri.
Yeah. So, Sandeep, 2 points here. One,
Right.
if under the Joe Biden administration,
Yes.
India became a strategic partner,
Yes.
it was by default because
Right.
there was a geopolitical shift happening.
Yes.
What I expect under the Trump administration is India becoming important by design,
Right.
not by default.
Right.
Because very clearly, the focus, Trump is very clear.
Yes.
He wants to shift his focus from Europe and to this part of the world and
China,
make
yes.
countering and containing China their
Yes.
priority.
Yes.
So I think there is no other nation
Right.
with a similar heft
Right.
which can actually be a force, which can be an ally
Yes.
in doing this. And we have our own issues with China, which have been sorted out,
Right.
recently to some extent.
The small issues.
Small issues, yeah. So that is number one.
Yes.
Number two is, when people talk about that Trump will bring about isolationism
Right.
in U.S. foreign policy, I think if you look at the appointments which he
Yes.
has made, I don't think it really indicates that any kind of isolationism.
Right.
It is probably what it indicates to my mind is a repurposing or refocusing
Yes.
of American priorities.
Right.
I think one of the biggest losers will probably
Yes.
be Europe,
Right.
where Trump has very clearly said that don't expect us to pay your bills or protect
Exactly.
you.
Yes.
I think you need to pay for your own bill and for everything.
Right.
And in fact, he said that if Russia wants to do whatever he wants to do to Ukraine, he's welcome.
Yes.
Right. So there is going to be a reframing of the geopolitical importance in the White House.
Yes.
And that will see India becoming very significant.
Very, very
ally.
important observation, Sri. And in fact, Trump has all along said that they were fighting the wrong war. And in fact, they kind of drove China and Russia together.
Right.
The Biden administration, he says, they did that. And I think one of the prime focus areas, like you pointed out, is going to be to bring that wedge back between China and Russia, drive Russia away from
Right.
China. So that possibly that's another deal that he's going to strike with them. But Manish Chand is with us. Manish, you cover the MEA very closely. You have, you have your finger on the pulse of India's MEA. But tell us how the MEA is looking at these three very significant appointees who are literally going to be the go-to people for the next couple of years. Or as Robin was saying, that nothing is cast in stone when it comes to a Trump administration. But for the moment, we must believe that these are the three gentlemen who are going to be running, defense and national security in the US for the next couple of years.
So Sandeep, the thing is that this is the Trump moment for India-US relations.
Yes.
Our biggest trump card, in fact, is Donald Trump himself.
Right.
And now he has complemented it with
Right.
his cabinet picks, who are well-known, India enthusiasts
Right.
and China hawks. So obviously, the buzz in the MEA is that India-US partnership is going to move on a higher trajectory.
Right.
We will have like-minded people. As you know, in the last days of the Biden administration,
Right.
because of their own human rights hawks and other elements,
Yes.
India-US partnership suffered a bit of strain.
Yes.
Because of the democratic fanaticism on the rights front, and you know what I'm talking about,
Right.
making a big issue out of Patwan Singh Kanoon and all those. There was a tendency to preach and sermonize.
Yes.
So in contrast to that, we have a pragmatic, transactional president, which is in a way
Yes.
good.
Yes.
This word is transactional,
Right.
whichever way you quote it.
Yes.
And number two, you have all these advisors. You name three of them, but
Yeah.
there is also Trump's pick for the United States ambassador to the United Nations.
Yes.
A woman who's known for a
Absolutely.
vociferous critique of China.
Of China,
So China
yes.
is not going to get an easy ride either
Right.
on the bilateral track or on the international arena. So what it means is that India, the China factor and Trump's overarching geopolitical strategy,
Yes.
Containment of an aggressive China.
Containment
And
of an aggressive China. Yes, Manish Chand, indeed.
yeah,
And you played that line very well. A Trump card for India, actually. And who else but Donald Trump to actually be that Trump card. And of course, his team was that team that he's brought out pack of surprises, all of them anti-China hawks. So Sri, as Robin was mentioning, the fact that Trump is a deal maker, essentially. Good cop, bad cop. He unleashes these three on China and strikes a deal with them. You think that's something that we could be looking for?
Absolutely. What we would be looking at is because, like Trump himself said, he's not looking for war.
Right.
But he wants to build pressure on China just the same.
Yes. And he would certainly not want China to go for Taiwan, as it was.
Absolutely
They were looking at 2027 as a deadline, literally, for an invasion of Taiwan by China.
True. And now I think that's not an option at all for China now.
Right.
I think they would not want to risk that sort of a strategy.
Absolutely,
especially with Trump in the White House.
Right.
So, Sandeep, I think it's fair to say that we will also see economic measures. It's not just about, let's say, geopolitical or political pressure being put on China. We might definitely see tariffs also being imposed on Chinese goods.
Right.
Although, how much US can realistically put tariffs on China, because ultimately, don't forget, it's their consumers who will have to, bear the cost of it.
Right.
Unless you're able to get another supplier who can supply the same quality at the same price and not hurt US consumer interest.
Right.
So that is going to be a delicate act. But it's fair enough to say that China definitely comes under a whole lot of pressure compared to the previous administration.
Right. China's under a whole lot of pressure indeed, and that invasion of Taiwan possibly, Sri, would have to be postponed by a couple of years.
Absolutely.
If not, forever. But, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, we are talking of the last administration actually laying down a deadline that they expect Xi Jinping to make a move on Taiwan by the year 2027. You think that's now off the table because Donald Trump is in the White House in January next year? Or is that, given the fact that Trump doesn't go to war, that would actually embolden Xi Jinping to actually make a play for it, because he's got a very short, small window that seems to be rapidly closing? Ambassador Prabhu Dayal.
Well, frankly, where China is concerned, nothing goes off the table. It always remains a possibility. But of course, the Chinese take their time in deciding what they want to do.
Right.
But coming back to the US interest in India, let me mention that the deep state of the United States has a great interest in fostering close relations with India. And what is the deep state? The deep state comprises certain non-elected officials, and this also includes the defense production establishment.
Right.
India is the world's largest importer of defense equipment.
Yes.
The United States is the world's largest manufacturer of defense equipment.
Right.
So the defense production establishment in the United States is very keen to have a good relationship with India, because it wants to be able to market its products in India. Now, Biden was more amenable to the idea of transfer of technology, because we have made it clear that we are buying equipment, but we ultimately want to manufacture it here. Make in India is our objective.
Yes.
Trump is a little difficult in that context.
Right.
He wants to export military hardware, but he's not so forthcoming when it comes to transfer of technology. So there will be a lot of negotiation that will have to be done if we want to be able to manufacture whatever we import from the United States, if we want to ultimately manufacture it here. But the defense-related relationship is going to be a key factor in defining the next 4 years.
Absolutely, very, very important points there, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. The fact that defense has always been the cornerstone of the India-US partnership, especially in the last 2 decades. But now what is really going to be the icing on the cake is whether the United States would actually go ahead with the transfer of technology which they promised under the Biden administration, or will President Trump extract another deal from us for that GE 414 engine that's currently held up. But Robin Sachdeva, you believe that Trump is going to actually use this opportunity with China to cut a couple of deals with Xi Jinping, because he likes to do this, big thing of, he's a showman basically. He likes to come in and say, hey, there was a problem over here. Biden created this mess, and now I've, with a few deft strokes of my pen, I've solved the problem. You think that's going to happen with when it comes to China?
I think so, yes. he will cut a deal, some kind of a deal. Of course, there's so many sectors of exchange. I mean, the whole semiconductor industry.
Yes.
That they will keep the ban and sanctions because
Right. The
war,
CHIPS Act, yes.
The CHIPS Act.
Right.
Yeah, the race is to keep the dominance in the chip sector, AI and all.
Yes.
Okay, so that, and America wants to be the number one empire. It does not want to let number two become number one. That is the game, right? So he will strike some deals, sectoral. He did that, in his presidency towards the fag end. He signed a deal, I think, for $50 billion of trade deficit to be reduced by China by buying goods
Yes.
from the agri-commodities, which is the agri-heartland, which were the voters for him, apparently, right?
Yes, yes.
So that was political driven, but he would strike some such deal. He would raise tariffs. China would negotiate, but they would come to a point where they would have some kind of a deal. How much that affects the other geopolitical frictions, I don't know, because other frictions will continue. On that point of a couple of things, there was talk America first,
Yes.
Or isolationism. America first is a two-sided coin.
Right.
It means America first inside the country,
Right.
and it also means America first globally.
Yes.
America is not going to abandon its leadership role, its economy, its dominance, etc. On the other hand, what America is looking to do is, rearrange it, rejig it,
Yes.
right, and create a new, what I call as a new world matrix, in which America will be the sun. It wants the solar system to be rotating around it. So it will not be that, I would think, right? Secondly, how the India-US relations could be some kind of a bicycle if we get in tandem for some at least initiative. There'll be some frictions, but it could be seen as a bicycle.
Right.
How MEA is looking at it, Indian foreign policy, I think immediately, right now,
Yes.
we should be looking at the Ukraine peace deal.
Right.
And India and America already should be talking, I would assume,
Yes.
on this. See, Modi, when he went to Moscow the first time, he clearly said, we are on a new journey.
Yes.
Diplomacy, we will,
Now
we
is
will
not the
provide-
time for war.
Not the time for war, and we will act proactively. That's what
Yes.
Modi said.
Right.
And after that, he met Zelensky,
Yes.
especially what for? Then he
Right.
went, of course, to the Quad, a meeting with Biden. Then he again met Zelensky in New York on sidelines of UN. What for?
Right.
Back, then he went to BRICS and met Kazan, Putin. To my mind, this was round one completed of Modi's one-point plan being stop the war. Now, with Trump in office, he wants the war stopped.
Right.
We are advocating for it. I think there should right now be huge synergy developing between the US and India
Yes.
and Russia towards some resolution within the coming weeks. It should be happening so fast, I would think.
Absolutely.
That's the
That's what
Last-
Trump gave a deadline of a couple of hours to end the war as soon as he took over. What, 24 hours? He's going to stop the war in 24
He
hours.
has said, sir, that he will
Yes.
stop the war before he takes the oath of office.
Correct.
Before 20th January. He'll
Right.
arrange it. So let's see, he's under deadline. So this could be a huge Modi playing a mediator or a moderator
Right.
of this evolving. This will be the round 2 going on, and round 3, and by round 4, hopefully, there'll be some framework which will develop.
Round 2, round 3, and howdy Modi, say hello to Trump, and Shri, stop the war seems to be the mantra for both Trump and Modi. Modi
Absolutely.
says now is not the time for war. Trump says stop
And
the war.
that's right.
I'm the president who doesn't start wars. I stop them.
Correct.
So there's a lot of synergy happening between Modi and Trump, and I think
Absolutely.
we're going to see a lot more of that, playing out in the next couple of months. But see, T for Trump, but T for tariffs as well, and that's a sore point between India and the US. And
True.
Trump has accused us of protectionism, and he's going to do something about that.
Yeah.
You see that as potentially the only speed break between India and US, or are there others?
So, in terms of the larger strategic relationship between
Yes.
the two countries, I think that will definitely become your probably the biggest friction point.
Right.
Because one sentiment which Trump carries with him as he goes into the White House for the second time is that India has deliberately kept a lot of its markets closed.
Yes.
Which, they pushed the soybean market open. In China, they'll want to do that in a bigger fashion with India.
Agriculture,
They'll want
yes.
agriculture, dairy industry to be opened up.
Yes.
So that, I expect
Right.
a lot of pressure on India on that count.
Right.
But ultimately, Sandeep, we all know the geopolitics about give and take.
Right.
Do we want some strategic technology from the US?
Yes.
if then we have to make small concessions.
Right.
That's the reality of life.
That's the deal that we have
and
to do
given
with
Trump's nature, he's a deal maker. Unless you give him a good deal, he's not going to
Yes.
do a deal with you.
Right.
Right. So I think it will have to be balanced very carefully.
Yes.
But I think underlying all this will be the fact that India is now an important ally for US,
Yes.
and they'll be more inclined to be a little soft on India.
Right.
That's my sense in terms of the larger game that US wants to achieve, which is because India is nowhere close to China in terms of the economic size and the heft. Right. They are far ahead of us. So it'll be a while before India gets to that kind of a position where we can start challenging US's global economic hegemony.
Yes.
Apart from the political, hegemony. So I think we will have a good relationship with the Trump administration going forward.
Yes.
And I think our government has also been very pragmatic, not just on the war bit, but also in terms of picking the engagements and the fights carefully.
Yes.
So you will see that we are able to reach compromises and certain agreements without actually fracturing the relationship in any significant way.
Right, absolutely. It's going to be a very interesting, times ahead for India and US, particularly given the fact that this new cabinet that Trump is going to bring in, it's a gust of fresh air. The names that we've been talking about, Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, and Pete Hegseth. But Manish, when is the next 2+2 dialogue between India and the United States? And, the first thing that's going to hit us is the age differential between the two sides. The fact that our ministers are, significantly older than the US appointees. Trump's cabinet, our average age, I calculated, is our ministers will be in their 70s, 73 and above. And it's the Trump cabinet you just heard, the three key names are 49 is the average age of the three key names. But Manish, when is the next meeting between India and the United States?
The
2+2
first of all,
dialogue.
let Trump be inaugurated. It's early days, but I would assume it will happen soon.
Right.
Because Trump wants to get a lot of things done with India.
Yes.
So I would assume that as early as probably July or something.
Right.
Or June, July or something. And Mark, this is also important to remember that India would be hosting the Quad Summit next year.
Yes.
And Donald Trump would be coming. You cannot have a Quad without one leader missing. So it's a given that Trump would be coming.
Right.
So I would imagine that India would be hosting Quad Summit somewhere around September or August or whenever.
Yes.
And the 2+2 meeting would happen before that.
Right.
So that is going to be the logical sequence of events. And before that, as you rightly mentioned earlier about the tariff and all those things,
Yes.
Commerce, on trade, investment, things will start moving. So this is going to be a very result-oriented administration, what we are going to see,
Right.
business-focused. So a lot of those ideological dissonance which we saw
Yes.
earlier would disappear. And, when we are talking about the trajectory of the relationship,
Yes.
the important thing to bear in mind is the commitment to the rise of India.
Right.
I think this is the project, the larger project, which enjoys robust bipartisan consensus.
Yes.
And I believe under Trump, that would acquire an added traction. And what things to watch out for us, I think we should not overplay the China bit too much,
Yes.
because as we know, is a deal maker, and we have forgotten to factor into account the X factor.
Yes.
By X factor, I mean Elon Musk. Musk has a flourishing, thriving relationship
Right.
with China. He's a
Yes.
power behind the throne in many ways.
Yes.
And so you never know how it's going to play out.
Yes.
But whichever way it plays out, even though he does a tactical deal with China, India would be the favorite in many ways.
Absolutely. India would be the favorite, Manish Chand, and given the fact that we would be the world's third largest economy in the term,
Right.
the second term of the Trump administration, tells you about how important the role that India is going to be playing in the Trump administration. And you just heard it from our experts here, the Team Trump, the advantages for India. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, Robin Sachdeva, Manish Chand, and of course, my colleague R Sridharan in the studio here with me.